Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Doug Anderson, Senior VP for Business, Finance, and Technology at Hamline. I've been there 12 years, and we have a number of folks here from Hamline tonight, both that are here because of the meeting, as well as are here because they live in the neighborhood. And so I'll try to do my best to introduce folks, and if I miss somebody, I'm just going to say, okay, who did I miss? But I am in the process, and I will tell you this right up front, I am in the process of retiring. And my successor, Margaret Tungseth, is here tonight, and so you can meet her later on. She's sitting right here in the front row. Next to her is Jackie Getty and Gail, who are with our communications area. Tony Grundhauser, our Vice President of Development and Alumni Relations, is over here to my right, and Ann Ness, another colleague, is here. She's in our marketing, Vice President of Marketing and Enrollment, or something like that.
You got it.
There are many other people in the room. Mike Reynolds is here.
Kim.
Thank you. Kim. Javier and Wendy. Okay, I'm looking. Dan Loritz is here. He's retired from Hamline University and a past colleague of mine. Mark Bergson is here. Van is here. Did I miss anybody?
Oh, wait.
Oh, yes. Doran is here. Where'd he go? There he is. Doran is here. Doran Clark is one of our trustees. He serves on the facilities committee of our board.
Ole. Ole.
Who?
Ole.
Ole. Oh, Ole. Hi, Ole.
What do you want?
Ole's a retired faculty member with Hamline. So that's who's here from him.
Anyway.
Okay, hi, I'm Tom Goldstein, and I'm here with Christine Vesely and Roy Neal, and we're just among many neighbors that came together because we were concerned about this issue. And we'll make the point now that we intend to make tonight, that what we would like from Hamline is a moratorium for the demolitions, and that this be the first of many conversations like this where the public is invited in and allowed to have a role in figuring out how we can meet the needs of the university while also respecting the neighborhood. And I want to acknowledge some people that are here. Andy Dawkins, who is former state legislature and currently running for Attorney General, has joined us.
1972 Hamline alum.
And then Hamline alum. And we also have from Russ Stark's office, Samantha Henningsen is here. And I know I'm missing someone else who's Josh Williams from the City Planning Department is here. Is Amy here as well? Okay, and Amy Spong from the Heritage Preservation and also city staff. So we appreciate your participation, and we're looking to have a very respectful conversation. But unlike Minnesota Nice, it's okay to be passionate. It doesn't mean you're rude if you're polite. So you may see some passion here about this issue because a lot of people do it very strongly. So please don't take that wrong, and please don't take it personally. We're going to try very hard not to identify with individuals or make any kind of attacks towards individuals, but there may be some tough words for the institution. So just so you're aware. You guys have anything you want to add? Okay.
And I just wanted to make another note on the agenda. Samantha Henningsen will be has a statement from Russ Stark on this issue too that she's going to read after Historic Hamline Village's presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to Hamline University.
Thanks. Good evening again. Again, my name's Doug Anderson. I'm with Hamline University. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to talk about, and then we can kind of wrap it up. But what I want to talk about is that, first off, I want to apologize. And we've been working since 2008 under a master plan that some of you that have been in the neighborhood may have even participated in some discussions about. But we did take some homes down, and that has been part of the plan. But I want to apologize for you that have felt that this was a surprise and that you may or may not have been aware. So I'm offering up an apology to start with. Secondly, in terms of, I'm going to talk about the idea of a moratorium, and I can tell you right up front that we're going to do that for 9 to 12 months, and we agree that we need to start up more conversations. We've missed the mark in terms of the number of conversations that we've had, but we do need to talk about 1549 Minnehaha as a separate topic. So that, we'll talk a little more about that in a minute. And what I'm going to start with, though, is I want to refresh our memory of what the planning process outcome was back in 2008. And some of you, as I said, I suspect were involved in this process. And I just brought a couple of things I can put up here to remind ourselves about that planning process and what evolved out of those community meetings. And I'm sorry this is really small, so you guys in the front can see, but I'll try to point out some things in terms of that planning process. Back in 2008, we had a consultant that was working with us. We had a number of community meetings. We had open forums. We had conversations with the city planning staff as well as with the mayor's office and with the Hamline Midway Coalition. And the outcome of that plan related to Hamline University's growth, and remember this was before the Great Recession, related to Hamline University's growth was to look at what do we need to do to support the student body as it continues to grow. So basically the plan included some expansion of Hamline University and some rethinking about what some of the spaces on the campus would look like. So if we start from the north end and kind of work south, on the north end, this upper area up off of Hewitt and Taylor envisioned some additional facilities and surrounding a parking ramp that would be expanding our teaching and learning around the arts, as well as adding some additional housing. If we go to kind of this central quadrant, this plan, and remind yourself that this is a kind of a 20-year vision. It's not set in concrete, but it's based on assumptions that were being used at the time. Included an additional academic building over here on Pasco and some additional housing by the law school. We go down here to this kind of third or second to the lowest quadrant. It includes maintaining Manor Hall and residential housing that may be new facilities replacing kind of the quad of Peterson and Osborne. And also includes the concept of a new student center, which, as we all know now, exists with Anderson Center, but back then it was only part of the vision. And then the lower quadrant includes an expansion of the university down to a new southern boundary of Minnehaha, as it was conceived with an idea of creating greater exposure for the Hamline Methodist Church, and putting in underground parking and creating kind of a commons area on the southwest corner of campus. So this was built again under a set of assumptions that included continued growth in undergraduate enrollments as well as graduate and law enrollments as we looked out 20 years. So that was the general sense of what was talked about at that time. And then with this planning process at that time, there was some work that was done to think about 5-year increments. And so this is the first 5-year increment that was developed in 2008. And so each of the 5-year increments, I'm only going to talk about this one. I have the other ones with if we want to talk about those later. The first 5-year increment, it included some priority projects around certain things. The first main priority project was the Student Center, the Anderson Center. Creating kind of a new living room space, a place for collaboration, not just by undergraduates, but by law students and graduate students and faculty and staff. And some new food options and underground parking. And this whole plan actually includes an assumption that any new building that's built, if feasible, would include underground parking to get people off the streets. So the Student Center was a high priority item. The greening of Snelling Avenue, which is work that is continuing through a variety of collaborative efforts, including MnDOT. There's work that's going on as far as creating a green look to the median on on Snelling Avenue, as well as hopefully lowering the light canopy so it feels more like a parkway in contrast to a state highway. I don't know about the light canopy. That seems to be more of a challenge for MnDOT. But there is some work that's going on here. Hamline University has made a commitment to take care of the greening, the foliage in the center island of the highway. And we're hopeful that at some point here, maybe soon if money can be found, that work could actually be done. This plan also included Hamline University divesting of a couple homes that we own on the west side of Snelling. At that time, there was some feeling that from a safety standpoint, it would be good to not have our admissions departments on the west side of Snelling because they're doing tours, etc. Let's bring that onto the east side with everything else. This is one area that the plan concept has changed. This is kind of a working document. There's no new plan yet, but the facilities committee of the board has talked about we're not going to divest these anymore. The intent is to maintain these homes. The undergraduate admissions house is the southern one, and the northern home here, which currently houses some faculty members, is envisioned to be a graduate admissions house for the long term. There's some renovation we need to do in the old Bush Student Center. It's now called Bush Center, and that's represented by this pink color right here. On the right side here is the location of the homes that we just took down. And so as you can see in the first 5-year plan, it was envisioned that those homes would be removed. And then down in the lower right is an expansion that was envisioned in our housing due to the increased undergraduate enrollments and housing needs. So this was the first 5 years. This plan, as I mentioned, was done right before the Great Recession, so you can imagine some things changed. And the priority that's been able to be fully completed is the Student Center. Thanks to other folks in the organization raising money and to some donors we're very grateful for, we were able to put that facility up, and it's offering some great opportunities for people to collaborate at the university. As I mentioned, we've done some work on Snelling Avenue that is hopefully moving ourselves toward being able to green that stretch of roadway and soften it a little bit. And then this past summer, we removed these homes consistent with this plan. This was noted as a 5-year plan, but here we sit in 2014 and we're 6 years later. So the Great Recession did slow us down and impacted the need for some things, including impacting the need for housing. And up till this year, we have not had our housing full by our students. But this fall, we're busting at the seams in terms of student housing. So one of the things that will need to be part of our discussions as we move into the future is to talk about expanding our housing. And so that's something that will be coming up that we look forward to a conversation about. So that's the status of the plan. Yeah?
So what are you putting on the spots where you took down the houses?
This is grass right now. In the long run, if you look at the 20-year plan, what would be built out in this upper right by Hewitt and Pasco, there's envisioned some expansion of the fine arts programs of the university, some housing, and then we would embed a parking ramp in the center of the block. Timing-wise, that wasn't part of the first 5-year approach. I forget exactly which year that was in. So that's some background in terms of where we've come from. The recession did slow us down. Enrollments haven't grown as fast, but as I mentioned, what we're seeing now is that enrollments are back to a growth trend, and we have housing needs. So I think the next thing that'll be coming up is to talk some about housing and what that means for the university. So that's the plan. Speaking about the moratorium idea, we've talked about that as a senior leadership group. We agree we need to pause and have more conversation. We have felt in the past that we've had a good relationship And back when we were doing this plan, we were having a lot of conversation about what this might look like and how the university needs could be met in kind of integrated into the community needs. We've missed the mark the last couple of years in keeping people apprised in terms of where we've been at. So it's taking 9 to 12 months to move ourselves into some meetings. I don't know how often those should be or how we'll organize those, but we're interested in doing that. As far as 1549 Minnehaha, do you have a question?
Yes. At what point did you tell the neighborhood you were ripping down a 100-year-old college president's house? And who did you tell, and why would you think that wouldn't be wrong?
Let me answer your question. We communicated, and I believe there actually was articles in the paper in terms of our plans for that house over the last couple of years. I appreciate the perspective and your comment about your thoughts about that home. From the university standpoint, the house had already been moved once. It was moved from the north side of Hewitt years and years ago to the south side of Hewitt. So that kind of takes it out of the historical status. The decision of the university was that from a renovation standpoint, it was too costly to renovate. So that was our situation. Ole?
I have a question about cost of renovation. Who gave the estimate of renovating the president's home, the White House?
I was from a contractor.
From a contractor. Was it the same contractor that said that old science was too costly to renovate?
I don't know.
I was here.
I
was here when that decision was made.
Yeah.
That old science would be too costly
Now, so this
to
was
renovate.
before Robin Science was built?
Yes.
Yeah.
And guess what? Okay, old science was renovated for a heck of a lot less, and it is still being used.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
All
Let me see if I can just finish up my comments quick.
Okay, go ahead.
And then we can dive in.
Well, and then they need to present.
Yeah. So in terms of 1549, we received some information from Council Member Stark's office in terms of some organizations that work with entities in terms of moving homes, continuing to utilize those homes. Some of those groups we had already talked to, some of them we hadn't. So we are in the process of following up with those organizations in terms of 1549 Hewitt. Minnehaha. 1549 is in a significant state of disrepair on the interior as well as to some extent on the outside. When we bought it a year ago, we need to remove that home. It's a hazard. There's some risk issues. But we're pausing for a month or two here with 1549, and we're going to follow up with these organizations to make sure we've got all the bases covered. And then we will make a decision in terms of what will be happening with that.
I don't want to take away from your presentation, but I just wanted to ask, we compiled a list of 22 homes that we described as endangered based on the original 2008 plan that were scheduled for demolition. Can you tell us, just so we know for the rest of the evening, which of those homes are no longer on the list? Because it's hard to tell from these small diagrams you're saying this and this, our home, I'm not sure how it's changed. So we don't want to go forward with the assumption that that's still the plan, that these 22 homes will still come down if in fact it's changed. So I'm wondering if you can clarify that.
I'm not sure which, I haven't seen that, so I don't know what 22 homes are on there. In terms of the plan, as far as the southern edge, as far as this southern edge, the plan includes additional housing developed in concert with the commitments that were made back when we built the apartment building in 2000. Between Simpson and Haskell, kind of what I might describe as a row house or something like that. So there would be additional housing, so those homes would be removed. This plan identifies that additional homes would be removed along Minnehaha
Well, if you can't speak to the list, you can't speak to the list, but we identified those 22 homes that are on those sheets, and we're just wondering if those are still scheduled for removal as part of your long-range plan. Are you able to say tonight whether they are or not?
I'll look at this list when I get finished,
Okay.
and then we can continue to talk. Let me finish my comments about 1549. And so from the university standpoint, I mean, our desire with 1549 is to pause for a month or two. We appreciate the questions. We're working with the entities that we were provided, working those through as far as is there an opportunity to move that home. But we will be, in the next month or two, making a decision about what the outcome of that will be. From a risk and a hazard standpoint, we need to do something with that home in terms of the present situation. So full moratorium on everything else, that's what we'll be moving forward with in terms of 1549. I don't know, Michael, John, how we want to handle the questions in terms of, do we want the other presentation?
I think we should let Historic Hamline Village kind of give their presentation and hold questions until after they're done, and then after Samantha has
Okay.
Can we move to the side?
Sure.
So can people hear me like this, or would you prefer that I stand up? Okay, fair enough.
Speak louder.
So I appreciate the presentation. I'm not sure exactly what the general details are, because it was hard for me to follow there. So for now, I'm going under the assumption that the original plan from 2008 is still the current plan, which means that 22 homes will be torn down, and Roy will speak later to what those are, so you can actually, so to speak, get a picture, a face with a name, or however you want to do it. And it's some homes that would surprise you. So Kiki-san, and former city council member, asked about the White House, which I think is actually a good starting point. Does everybody remember the campaign to save the White House? There was a big gala event. There was a phone-a-thon. There was dignitaries were asked. There was a dinner. There were numerous pleas to alumni. Students organized. A lot of money was raised, and then at the last minute, Hamline changed his mind, because that didn't happen. There wasn't a campaign to save the White House because a determination was made that it was too expensive to save. So it's interesting because this summer I was actually at the real White House. My son interned this summer, and I had the privilege of taking a tour of the West Wing, which you can only do if somebody you know is working there, and he happened to be interning there. And it would surprise you, for the building as we see it and the iconic image that it is, it's actually pretty small on the inside. The hallways are somewhat narrow. The ceilings are kind of low. It's not modern. I mean, it obviously has enormous history, and there's a big cabinet room, and there's the Oval Office and all those things, but there aren't a lot of bathrooms. You're maneuvering pretty tightly. There's a lot of groups that go through in tours, and so, you know, you have to sort of maneuver around one another. But nobody ever talks about tearing down that White House. And, you know, there's an obvious reason for that, because it symbolizes for us sort of the hopes and dreams of what we hope to be as a country, what we try to be as a country. We don't always please everybody, but there's an expectation that that symbolizes what our country is about. And I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and if you look at the whole area that surrounds the White House, there are no huge buildings. There is a deliberate attempt to keep it a very historical area. There's museums, there's monuments, and there's also many federal offices and many working businesses, but there aren't skyscrapers that blot out the scenery. And it's a kind of place that draws tourism that we all take pride in. And we would never think of tearing it down, of course, because it's the kind of ethos that we believe in, and I would argue that that's sort of our national campus, and we take pride in it. And I would argue that isn't that what we would expect of the oldest university that we have? Now, some people say, well, that's a ludicrous example. You're talking about the White House in Washington, D.C., and you're making a comparison with the White House here. There's no comparison. It's the federal government. They have unlimited resources. But is this really about money? Is 1549 Minnehaha really about money? Hamline raised $36 million for the Anderson Center. Hamline spent $1.5 million on a new president's home on Summit Avenue. And I might add that that was a home that, prior to being acquired, paid $11,000 in property taxes, which it no longer pays, which means that over the last 10 years or so that Hamline's owned it, about $100,000 of money has not come to the city. And I mention that point because I think with universities that enjoy a special status, that privilege comes with responsibilities, that we are all subsidizing those buildings. We don't talk about what Hamline should teach, we don't talk about their curriculum, we don't talk about the students that they should enroll, we don't talk about the faculty they should hire. But I think we have a right to talk about what the impact should be in the neighborhood, especially since we're all basically paying for it. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that the current administration gets that. I'm not sure that they value the historical character, because one of the homes that is currently on the list to be demolished is the one that's just literally doors down, which functions as the guest house. It's hard to believe that this beautiful brick Victorian home could potentially meet the wrecking ball, but it's on the plan. That land is targeted for something else. And so we don't feel that shows the kind of appreciation for historic character that matters. And I want to just give you an analogy, and it's a baseball analogy, and for people who know me, I published a literary baseball journal for many years and have been a baseball fan for a long time. So Fenway Park is this storied ballpark in Boston that a lot of people, even if they aren't baseball fans, have heard of. It was built in 1912. Every year, it's like a pilgrimage. People go there to watch baseball. Well, in the late 1990s, the Boston Red Sox said, you know, we can't function here anymore as a team. It's too small, it's not functional, we can't compete, we can't attract people, we need to tear it down. And there was a will for effort to tear it down. And what happened was a community group, maybe started out sort of like us, that came together to save Fenway Park. And they lobbied the Red Sox, they tried to get the Red Sox involved, the Red Sox weren't interested, and eventually they put together a symposium, a charrette, for architects, for people who work in the planning field, know what charrettes are. They're planning symposiums where you bring a lot of people together, you get a lot of ideas, and you see what might work, and you don't limit the ideas just to certain people, you let a lot of people in, so you have a lot of creativity on the table. And out of that charrette came many of the improvements and changes you saw to Fenway Park. The seats on the Green Monster, wider concourses, all sorts of things were done. The Red Sox are about the third or fourth highest grossing revenue teams in baseball. They have about the third or fourth highest payroll. They've won 3 World Series since they renovated and didn't tear down Fenway Park. And yet, every media outlet, every expert, every former ball player, Ted Williams, great thing, but she's got to go. And they were wrong. Fenway didn't go. People still flock there. They flock to Wrigley Field, where they're one of the worst teams in baseball, plays every year, and yet they draw fans by the boatloads. So I would argue that history matters, because in Detroit, where they had historic Tiger Stadium that had a similar impact on the community, they left it and they tore it down, and it's an empty field. And it's been an empty field. I mean, it's been vacant for 15 years. It's been an empty field for about the last 5, because the Tigers, who had the responsibility to maintain it, didn't maintain it. And that's the kind of, if you look at that neighborhood in Detroit, it's a devastation, because it's a huge area that just became an open field. And it worries me, because where I live, not very far from here, right on Sherburne, I live behind Midway Chev dealership. And several years ago, Midway Chev bought 2 houses. I was not living there at the time. I've lived there for 10 years. They bought 2 houses, and according to the neighbors, they didn't take care of them, and eventually they went to the city, and they said, these houses are, we can't keep them up, we need to tear them down. And the city said, okay, tore them down. We've had empty lots for 15 to 20 years, and every morning I look out and I see the back of the building. I've got a picture here, but it's kind of small, and you probably wouldn't see it very well, similar to these charts, but that's what I look at for 10 years. That's not an improvement for the neighborhood. It's not good for the community. And what we've seen is that our fear and our fears have not been allayed, that's really the plan. buy these homes, tear them down, don't maintain them, say you can't afford them, and then eventually you have vacant lots, and what are you going to build there? You might as well expand. And I'm sorry if that sounds harsh to people, but we've seen a lot of neglect of the properties that the university already owns. And so that's what we see as the game plan, and that's what really worries us. And because we think if there's $36 million for Anderson Center, and there's $1.5 million for a new home on Seminole Avenue away from the university, there's certainly money to save this home. If you're worried about security, board it up. The plumbing has already been pulled out. The brand new plumbing was taken out. The stained glass has been taken out. A number of things are gone from that house, the radiators, but it's certainly salvageable, and the new owners put a ton of things in it. They put new windows. The previous owners put new windows, new roof, new electrical, new plumbing, and we're in the process of putting siding on it when Hamline bought it last year, and that's where it sat for the last year. So I'm going to get to my final part here, and then Roy's going to come up and actually talk about the houses. But what I want to leave you with is that there is a better way. And that better way is that not have meetings like this where we're all under the fear of demolition. We're all trying to pack a bunch into one meeting. Let's use this moratorium period as a time to have as many conversations as we can, and let's hold a series of charrettes. Let's get everybody out on the table. You know, could a plan that repurposes the many historical homes that we've talked about work? We don't know. And we don't presume to have all the answers at all, but we don't think Hamline has them either. Does Hamline really need more parking spaces given the access to mass transit and services like Cars to Go? And if Hamline lacks event parking, why don't we start a student valet service? Students can earn work-study money and park cars, and then people can show right up to the event, get out, and you have a gala, and they bring the cars around and pick you up when you leave. Or with our focus on transit-oriented development, why not build buildings that have classrooms in the bottom and housing above, just like we've talked about University Avenue, businesses and housing. So we think there are a lot of options. We want this forum to be the first of an ongoing dialogue with the community. That's all of you. And we want historians and planners and architects and elected officials and everybody to be at the table and to have the best ideas there. We need to re-engage the community, and we need the best ideas, not just the convenient ideas. And that's what we're trying to do with Historic Hamline Village. And thanks again for everybody coming here.
I just wanted to add one important point. My name is Christine again, and that is that hasn't been raised so far by Hamline or by anyone from Historic Hamline Village, and that's that the expansion boundary has not been approved by the city at this time. So houses are being acquired in areas where Hamline does not have permission to build anything. And maybe someone from the city at some point, you know, Amy or Josh, wants to stand up and speak to that. So I think that what is being done, unfortunately, is the acquisition and demolition of houses to manipulate the city to approve the plan next time it's applied for. And, that's kind of sneaky.
Okay, so
appreciate everyone's attendance tonight. Obviously a really important issue for the neighborhood. I think clearly Hamline's been an asset to this neighborhood for a long time. And I think what I'm hearing from the neighbors is that there's a desire for recognition on Hamline's part that the neighborhood is also an asset to Hamline. Mm-hmm. I think that would go a long way. I understand that Hamline was committing tonight to a moratorium of sorts. I wanted to say that I think 1549 Minnehaha should be part of that. I think ideally, if we could go back in time, things would have started out differently in this whole process. Obviously, there have been some buildings taken down recently, some concern growing around that trend. I really think it's a good time for us all to just kind of take a time out, establish a better relationship moving forward. Hamline's obviously in a period of transition in terms of the college's leadership, and I think there's frankly not a good reason to move forward with changes until it's clear both what the college's needs and desires are going to be moving forward under new leadership, and until the relationship is strengthened with the neighborhood. The 2008 plan that Hamline has for their campus calls for a campus expansion down to Minnehaha, but those campus boundaries were never officially changed in terms of the city process. And so I think it needs to be a recognition on both sides that we have to work together on this, and that if there's going to be an expansion of Hamline's campus boundary, the neighborhood's going to have to be bought into that. It's just that's how this works. My predecessor was unfortunately had to be involved in many years of contentious discussion between the community around the University of St. Thomas. And I inherited those issues when I got into office, but I can tell you that it's taken a long time for the community and that campus to dig back out of bad feelings. And I think this is really a moment in time where there's an opportunity to avoid most of that and move forward together. So I look forward to the rest of the conversation, and glad you're all here tonight.
So we'll start moving our way through. So let's start here.
This is for Doug Anderson. Doug, a moratorium, how long is Hamline thinking about a moratorium?
9 to 12 months.
How many?
9 to 12 months.
9 to 12 months.
Okay.
Hang on. Why 9 or 12? What's the?
We'll agree on that. It could be 12 months.
What are you expecting to have in place at the end of that 9 to 12 months that you can present, as far as why that moratorium should be lifted then at that point?
I think that's a great question. I mean,
So
clearly the objective
that
of taking some time to pause.
Yeah.
It's going to be up to us working together to see where we're at after that period of time. I mean, the thing from a priority standpoint, as we can see as a university right now, is we're going to need to start talking about additional housing. But taking this time to have some of that conversation and to talk about other things will be good.
Okay. I want to direct it to you, Doug. I was involved, or at least attended a lot of meetings for the dorm, and I'll be a little bit more optimistic perhaps than Russ was with St. Thomas, because it really worked out well, in my opinion, because at first, as the gentleman behind me talked about, it wanted to be on Minnehaha, but one of the things that we talked about was to preserve the look of Minnehaha with those houses. So
right.
They moved it, turned it 180. We looked at the traffic flow, what would be best for the students and best for the community. And to me, it truly ended up a better product. It was a win-win, I thought. And the height requirements, we had long discussions. But something I think has changed since then, and an example is, well, we've heard some of them, with the tear down, but even then one of the big concerns was, parking, where are people going to put their cars, the students coming in. So I'm wondering, for example, do you always try to keep in mind a certain number of parking spaces? I mean, I'm also aware the BRT is going up and down Snelling, and I've seen the nice ride bikes. I think those help a lot.
Car to go.
The car to go and all those things.
You're raising a number of questions. Let me talk quickly.
Yeah.
In terms of the transportation piece, we're fully supportive of Nice Ride. We have an hour car. We're doing a lot of things, and we're very sensitive to sustainability. The challenge we have, I'll call it a challenge since our council member is here, the challenge we have is we're under requirements to have a certain amount of parking based upon a formula that isn't really responsive to that. So if we can get more people on public transportation, we're still locked into the formula that the city has that requires us to have so much parking. So that's something we need to work on, is how do we get those pieces to work together. So I'm not picking on you, council member, but we need to work on that over the next few years, because that's a challenge for us. This particular, the concept that was outlined in 2008 with the housing down on that corner on Minnehaha between Simpson and Pascal was intended to be responsive to the commitments that were made back in 2000 as far as what could eventually be built there. And there, I believe it's officially noted, formally noted, and Samantha's here somewhere. She knows about this, and we have the information in terms of what the requirements are. If we would choose to bring forward a proposal to put up more student housing there are requirements about how that would need to be handled. based upon the discussions back from that apartment complex. From a parking standpoint, in terms of what the concept that was outlined in the plan, it includes embedding a parking ramp in the middle of the block. So the parking would not be visible. It would be underneath the buildings as well as embedded in the center of the block. There's a lot of this going on, and I don't know about downtown St. Paul, but in downtown Minneapolis, it's happening all over the place, where the housing or the office space or the retail is built around the parking ramp in the center of the block.
Let's get another question.
It's real important, though, that
We got a lot of people who have questions. Let's
Hamline University survives and is a dynamic part of our community, I think.
let's go back.
I'll try to be really brief. This is incredibly difficult for me. I'm in my 20th year at Hamline, but I lived for 7 years at the corner of Asbury and LaFond and walked to campus every day. I now live over by Fairview and Englewood, and I'm a big fan of historic preservation. I'm also a big fan of realism. I've got a couple questions, or comments actually, not questions for Doug, but I want to make real clear that these are not from an adversarial position at all. I have, as some of you have met me on Facebook, this is really hard. But I recently emailed on campus to ask how I could get a hold of the master plan, because I wanted to revisit it before this evening, and it's password protected. So one of my questions is whether we would consider actually creating a part of our website that is meant to be public, that shares this information. I don't know if there may be fiscal things that shouldn't be there, but I think we could build something out, marketing, and have this be accessible. And the other thing that I would ask is that we revisit the former position that existed that created an official liaison. I know we have someone that sits on the coalition, but there used to be a person who actually was charged with community relations. So I thought it would be my thoughts.
There's no problem making it more public in terms of the information. I gotta admit, I wasn't exactly sure it was password protected. I thought it was available. So we'll check that out and get that taken care of. In terms of the connection with the community, the coalition, et cetera, Jackie is the member of the board. Mike Reynolds will be joining the development committee, I think, starting in January. Is that correct? So we do have some connections, but I appreciate your comment.
Let's go here.
What is the responsibility of the owner of a building to keep it maintained so that they can't just say, this thing is a disaster, we have to knock it down?
Someone from the city?
Amy, do you want to comment on that, since you were going to talk about the White House and didn't get that chance yet?
Well, it's not technically a historic preservation, but the city does have minimum property standards. It's enforced through the Code Enforcement Division and the Department of Safety and Inspections. So there are minimum property standards. I do know that from being in that department for a while, it is more of a complaint-based system, and how they hear about and know about if there is, and it's in the city's legislative code, the requirements on maintaining a home. You know, you have to keep the grass cut, you've got to keep paint from chipping, you know, it's fairly basic, but is it correct if someone, an absentee landlord, not necessarily Hamline, but an absentee landlord, doesn't maintain a property, and for whatever reason code enforcement never gets to that property over a period of time, that when it gets to the point where it's fallen below that minimal standard, it's likely, someone can apply for a demolition permit and tear it down? Yes, and there's also, when it comes to rental property, there's also a certificate of occupancy program that that is through our fire. So they have to also maintain additional safety standards as well, and have regular inspections.
Just to add to that briefly, I mean, from a sort of building code, fire code issue, yes, you have to maintain minimal standards. Starting about 8 years ago, we started inspecting all 1 and 2 unit rental properties. So even a single family home being rented out has to get fire certificate of occupancy for safety purposes. But nothing stops someone from demolishing a building on their property if that's what they want to do, unless that property is specifically got some protections on it or something else going on. There's nothing that prevents someone from deciding, I'm going to tear down this building on my property.
Okay, Stephanie.
I'm going to stand because I'm short. When I moved into the neighborhood, and I'm an ex-academic, I couldn't understand the hostility of the neighborhood towards Hamline. After seeing the total disregard, demolition of houses, the sort of things they're replacing these houses with, I am appalled. The university, Hamline University, called me in to look at the law dorm, one room. Doug, is Hamline going to do equally poor quality construction? Because according to my understanding of construction, which is pretty good, there are major construction problems, there are health problems. So what sort of construction? Why not put parking, the second part, why not put the parking under the law dorm if you want parking? Why tear historic houses down? Why destroy our neighborhood? Why does Hamline have such a total disregard for the residents? I moved into the neighborhood because it was charming and graceful. The law dorm is the epitome of what I would not want to live in. Please answer.
If you want to get as many people, a lot of people have questions.
First off, I apologize about your feelings that we're not a good neighbor. I think that we make every effort to care for things in an appropriate fashion and build them at a standard that is acceptable. I know we do that.
We need to talk about that.
And I already indicated earlier that our intent is to put new parking under new buildings when it's feasible to do that. And so we are making every effort to do those kinds of things.
Okay.
I'm wondering, the property at 1538, I believe, Englewood, this is the property that is imminently eligible for historic, for heritage, historic heritage.
Preservation.
Preservation.
Right.
That property was not owned by Hamline at the time that it was nominated, or it was stated that it was eligible, is that right?
I don't know that history, ma'am.
I can add something to that. It was identified as eligible for the National Register of Historic Places because it met all the criteria and it was in excellent shape. That was before Hamline acquired the property.
That's what I thought.
Right.
Okay.
Can we get some folks back? Oh, sorry.
Sure. Why are you including that property then as part of the demolition and not pursuing the historic preservation? Why did you buy it in the first place?
We bought it because the owner called us and asked us if we'd be interested to buy it. We're using it as a guest house. The concept of the plan and what happens to the homes within that plan, that is a beautiful home. When we did this, when we had the discussions back in 2008, I believe we talked about moving it. But
if you move it, it won't be
it's a discussion. I understand that.
And then you can.
Okay, let's go back there.
Okay. My name is Diane, and I live on Pass from the Law and Grads building. That's what they called it when they said they needed it. It's always been about parking. It's always been about housing. And back in the late 90s.
Can you speak up there?
Back in the late 90s, Hamline said they needed a parking lot across from my house. They did a big land grab. They bought the block. They knocked down all the houses. It was, I don't know, maybe 8 months later, they didn't need that parking lot anymore. They needed a 180-bed facility for law and grad students. When in the neighborhood put a lot of time and energy trying to mitigate the impact on us, and Hamline was not friendly, and it wasn't the first season that building opened. As I understand it, they were renting to McAllister College students. So you have to forgive me if I don't trust that you want to deal with your parking issues and that you need housing, particularly when you're tearing them down. And I just really want to thank you for organizing this meeting and educating neighbors that this is going on. And I'm really disappointed in Hamline University that you're not conducting these meetings and setting up there's layers and layers of issues here. It's not just about the historic homes, which is a very important issue. It's about livability, and it's really insulting to neighbors to hear that you need green space, because let's face it, we all know your agenda, particularly those of us who have lived in this neighborhood for a long time. I've been here 25 years. I know Ole has probably been here 50, and I would really like Hamline to show respect. After the Law and Grad building was built, I alone, after my neighbors were exhausted from ad hoc committees, I sat alone in a room full of 12 men and was offered an air conditioner for my bedroom to mitigate the problem of the HVAC system that was built atop the building was screaming through the neighborhood, and people down on Hamline could hear it, but they didn't know where it was coming from. I did. And I could go on and on for hours, but Hamline, don't talk smack, okay?
I just do want to respond. We're a co-sponsor of this event tonight. I just want you to know that. And the information that went out indicated that we were a sponsor of this event as well.
I don't think it should be that you're co-sponsoring anything. I think with the history of how Hamline has...
I'm just correcting the fact in terms of what you said.
Really, there are layers of this, and this is there's a lot of work to be done on Hamline's part, and there's a lot of work on the neighborhood's part to be done, and this isn't anything that's going to be rectified in 8 months.
And I think
because
it's
we
going
have
to
some
take longer than
experience now
9 to
with
12
this.
months to get those layers put out
Okay,
there
let's
for
go
the
here.
table.
Thank you.
On the table. 9 to 12 months is not enough time.
Okay, we're talking about manners, I guess. And I think it's kind of rude. How can Hamline say they're going to demolish buildings that they do not own? Ooh. It's a threat.
Okay.
Actually, my question is related to that. I couldn't help but notice that there are several homes on the list that Hamline either did not own at the time that they put the plan together or still does not own.
8 they still don't own.
How does that work? Do they approach the homeowner? Or the brick house that they acquired recently, I guess it sounds like the owner asked if they wanted to sell it. But I'd like to know a little bit more about how that works. Do they expect that they'll be able to purchase the house at some point? What efforts do they put into making that happen? And I don't know if the city or Doug, if you want to speak to that.
I can start on that. This is a concept plan that was developed with involvement back in 2008. It's a working plan. I've shared a little bit, just some minor things in terms of how it's been thought about as far as tweaking it, like keeping the houses on the west side of Snelling. It is not a land grab. It is a communication that as the university looks and thinks about its needs in the future, that moving the southern boundary down to Minnehaha is the concept that's outlined in this plan. The way that that these homes have been identified to us is the owners have called us. I sat last night and thought about this. I think in every case, the homes we bought in the last 10 or 12 years have been, the owner has called us and said, you know what, we're thinking about selling, are you interested? And they've made that call because they know that we might be interested. And that's how we found out about
One point I want to make is that, and I think I speak for a number of people here, is that the fear is that once the homes are acquired, if they're torn down, then if you're still a neighbor and you've got 3 or 4 properties around you, you're going to sell out or you're not going to want to live there, and eventually, and Hamline would not be unique. I mean, anybody who assembles parcels of land tends to do that. They just want to buy them up and keep their costs down. So they're not doing anything illegal, but it's just that that's what, we don't think that's neighborly, and we think that's what the plan is. And nothing tonight, I mean, I would love to hear that Doug said, you know what, I'm like the candy man, and I've been waiting and waiting for the right moment, but we're going to save 1549 Minnehaha. You've convinced us, we're going to change our mind, but I don't think that's forthcoming tonight.
Okay, I'm going to get back to questions. Here.
All right, so I'm a student at Hamline first year, and I've got to say, I love it, but it was kind of a tough decision to go there because you guys don't have honor houses, the president doesn't live on campus. And our budget people, and getting this all Ross family, who we've known for years, who built your shiny football stadium, said, you know what, it's a great community, they're really interconnected with the city, and it's great because it's an urban school. But I've honestly got to question that now, because it doesn't seem to be that case. So would you guys be open to potentially considering these properties that you can't even build all of these things on, turning them into honors houses or a president's home, and competing with all the other universities in Minnesota that are on the same par as you, such as St. Olaf and McAllister, that have those honors houses and have the president living on campus?
Bravo.
Bravo.
Did you want? I don't know how many times I should keep responding. I don't know how you want to answer.
I mean, I'd like a response.
I think
well, the president's home commitment is a decision that the board made 9 years ago, 10 years ago. I don't, as the CFO, I don't anticipate that changing. So that's the comment about the president's home. In terms of honors houses, et cetera, I guess my response is discussion to have. You know, I know we just enhanced and Mike knows more about this than I do in terms of the honors curriculum and et cetera. But
okay, I'm gonna go here and then I'm gonna.
Okay, I'm Sarah and I'm also a student at Hamline University. I'm a first year as well. And I'm speaking objectively. I agree that both sides are important, but I think that Hamline spouts this idea of service and community, and I feel that I'm feeling a little upset that Hamline hasn't talked to the community before, and I really feel that also, along with Michael, that honors house would be a good idea. If we want to preserve these historical homes, but also keep the Hamline community connected, that why can't we use some of these homes instead of demolishing them and destroying the community relationship that we have, and including the students and the community.
This is not really a question, but a comment, and I wanted to, I'm curious why Hamline decided that they should buy a home for the president on Summit Avenue. If the White House was no longer livable, they could have bought a nice home in the neighborhood, but by purchasing on Summit Avenue, you seem to have taken the leadership of Hamline University away from the neighborhood, and it's kind of a slap in the face for saying your neighborhood's not good enough for our president to live in. And that's all. I just think it was a bad move.
Okay, thanks.
So we've discussed National Register nomination a little bit, and none of these properties are on the National Register. That is an honorary, and house could be listed on the National Register one day and torn down the next. It's local designation, local protection that protects these houses. We've already discussed that St. Paul does not have a demo by neglect ordinance. This is not part of a historic district. I know Amy took some time out to be here tonight, and I'm not sure that there's any coverage that we currently have that would protect these. Is that something that we can work toward during this moratorium period to try to protect these houses, to try to designate a district, to try to do something in that? Because that's something that we can do as a community.
That's what
I'm Art Gitter. I'm also a faculty member for 20-some years, but I'm also a neighbor a couple blocks down. And I have to say, Doug, that I find the lack of communication with the neighborhood over the last few years is not good. You know, I'm hearing things tonight that I didn't know, that I think maybe as a faculty member I should have known. I do have one question, though, that hasn't been raised here. You know, we talked about 22 houses that either Hamline owns or is in their plan to be torn down. You say you're going to have maybe a 9 to 12 month moratorium. Could you tell us if we didn't have this meeting, how many houses were going to be torn down within those 12 months? There must have been some 12-month plan. How many more houses would have been torn down?
How many more?
Yeah. So 1491 would not have been torn down. No house would have been torn down in these next 12 months.
1549
yes.
is going to be dealt with in the next month or two, but after that, there is no houses planned to be torn down.
So in other words, I hate to say this stuff, but your moratorium means nothing, right? Right? It was easy for you to say you're having a moratorium because you weren't planning on tearing anything down.
This is a question for the CFO. College enrollments are not really rising right now. They're kind of flat. And graduate school enrollments in particular are diving. Yet you've spoken about the need for Hamlin to expand and build, and I'm wondering what is driving this need? Who is going to come to Hamlin that's not there now when college enrollments are really flatlining?
Mike.
Hamlin University's experience has bucked the trend. 3 years ago, I'm looking at Mike here, 3 years ago, we increased our first year class, and we've been having increased first year classes since then, and our board has put in place a strategic plan to move our undergraduate enrollment from basically 2,000 up to 2,500 in another 3 years. So we are actually, and quite frankly, with Hamlin's reputation and with the marketplace that is right now, an urban university with the diversity that we have is very welcome.
How's
In
the discount
fall,
rate doing?
in fall 2007, just so you get some actual numbers, and they can dispute them if they would like. In fall 2007, the Hamlin's, what they call FTEs, which is the part-time and full-timers counted together, undergraduate, which is what's driving this plan, in the fall of 2007, it was approximately 2,020 students. In the fall of 2012, it was 2,045. Fall of 2013, it was 2,137. So there has been an uptick of approximately 100 more students. I'm not sure how that translates to all these properties need to be taken out. They couldn't be accommodated with existing properties already and not have to do any demolitions. But Hamlin is bucking the trend maybe temporarily, but we haven't seen, that's the whole charrette idea, is get all the scientists there to find out whether Hamlin's bucking the trend for the next 15 years, or are they bucking the trend for the next 2 years? Because this plan was launched in 2008, officially unveiled, and admittedly the recession changed everybody's game plan, but nationally enrollments are not growing what they're experiencing, and this is really about a 5% increase over 5 years is the net effect. So that's the kind of stuff that would come out in a very, hopefully one with not as much emotion kind of discussion. Let's get all the facts on the table, and smart people can make good decisions.
Okay.
The question, actually, I had back in 2008 and I'm still concerned with, deals with the campus boundary and the setbacks. And in the master plan, it does not have any indication of a 50-foot setback down Pascal or Minnehaha. And actually, the setbacks are less than the current houses across the street. And you had mentioned, Doug, that there were commitments made when the apartments went up on that block at the corner of Pascal and Minnehaha. What are those commitments and who made them?
Well, it's documented at the city. In my layperson language, it's that if there's additional housing put in there, that it would be in the style of and consistent with the neighborhood. And is Samantha here?
Yeah, so additionally, the fourplex on the corner of Minnehaha and Pascal, is it? That can't be taken down until there's an approved city plan for whatever is going to go on that block. But for some reason, that was the one building that was called out as being protected in the 1997 document with the city.
Are the setbacks respected then in that agreement?
I remember this conversation, and I thought that and I don't recall the exact setback.
The current building that was built is only 35 feet, so it violates the setback already.
I remember, I'm sorry, I don't remember the specifics in terms of what the current building is or what the setbacks are on the concept plan, but I remember the conversation, and I think that our conclusion was that we were in line with the setbacks, but I take your question, and we'll need to figure it out. Our intent is not to breach the setbacks.
Because the plan obviously does not have green space between the neighborhood and your proposed campus boundary. And that's, I think, a huge problem. We talk about green space, and there isn't any. It's not even respecting the 50-foot setbacks.
Yeah.
My name is B. Ritten, and I moved to the neighborhood about 18 months ago. I live where Fairview and Hewitt hit. You might know that four-way stop. None of us know where to stop and the next place to go. My little teeny tiny house that sits there across from the park and the tennis courts, I'm pretty sure that when the owners and their young family moved in, house was built in 1916, when they walked up Hewitt and across Snelling, they walked to the library because they were good citizens, as we all are. They looked at the White House at 1549, and to them, that was the White House that Tom spoke about. To them, that was the White House in their neighborhood. And if we went to school and we used the library and we were good, we maybe could make enough money to move into that big White House at 1549.
Interesting.
I don't live in the neighborhood. I didn't go to Hamline, but I grew up in the neighborhood. Kitty corner from the apartment building you were just talking about. It's so far on the safe side of Minnehaha. And I wonder how long that will last when you'll decide to expand beyond Minnehaha. The one thing I haven't heard anybody talk about is just the neighborhood feel. What concerns me when you tear down this many houses is that you are destroying a neighborhood. I mean, this is where I grew up, and it meant a lot to me. It was a good neighborhood to grow up in. It was a safe place to live. And I hate to see that destroyed to accommodate an institution. I understand the need for expansion, but this large-scale demolition of homes really destroys a neighborhood. And I wonder if the school district is aware of what homes you are planning to take and how that might impact enrollment for them, as well as the fact that they're all coming off the tax rolls. But it's the feel of the neighborhood and the memories I have of growing up there. I'm very concerned about Hamline Library as well, not the university library, the public library. And I wonder if the reason the city doesn't put any money into that library is because they think Hamline will just move on and they'll tear it down. I just wanted to speak for the kids who grew up here, and I would hope would still be growing up here, because it is taking away a chunk of the neighborhood that we all knew.
Two quick things. Comment, McAllister president does not live on campus.
Can't hear you.
Talk loud. The McAllister president does not live on campus.
Nor does the Augsburg president.
Which was, my wife worked there for 13 years roughly. That's just a comment. And I have one question which I tried to ask earlier. Is the minimum housing requirements, is that available to somebody? In other words, can you go on a website and get that minimum requirement and see how it changes from year to year? Because I'm sure it does.
Are you talking about the minimum standards for a house?
I think what Amy was talking about the city, the minimum requirements for
like what the city code is.
Yeah.
You can go on.
Yeah, well, so
Someone can
briefly try to address that. Not my area of expertise, but my understanding is that we've got building code and fire code, both of which get updated, frankly, all the time, but are available on the city's website. And it's pretty basic stuff that's easily found, and contractors know what those standards are.
All right, thank you.
Just a couple quick comments. So one, I wanted to say, and I think a lot of people feel this, and maybe it's not being stated, but I really am a fan of Hamline. Going back to my parents met at Hamline University, fell in love, great family. My uncle went there. One of our family's best friend's daughter started this fall, and I think the university has done an incredible job in diversifying its student base and reaching out to first-generation students and bringing them in. I think it's doing things that other institutions in our city should be doing. So, and I know this man from the bus stop, so I know some of the staff, and I think they're really great people. But I gotta say, I'm disappointed in the kind of planning and communication of this piece. I will say I am not a historic home preservation knowledgeable person, but I do believe, kind of like, in a way, what she was saying, which is, I think this has implications for the economic viability of our community. It can either be a very positive thing if we work together and truly engage in sorting out what's a win for the university and how that respects the neighborhood, or it can be a turning point in our neighborhood. And so I'm looking for true engagement, and what I hope to come out of this meeting is maybe a plan that we would come back in a month and Historic Hamline and you guys would give us, this is how we're going to engage. Because a big public meeting and doing a couple of these over the next month or 12 months will not lead to anything substantial.
We fully support that
So we
idea.
need to have somehow, what is that, and I don't expect you to know that tonight, and you said
you're open to it, but you don't really know how it, but it's important, the process of how we engage.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm looking for out of tonight.
Doug, I have a question.
And if we're co-hosting, next time the cookies are on Hamline University.
More than happy to do that.
Okay, okay.
My wife and I, my wife and I own a home on Taylor Avenue between the softball field and the community garden, so between Albert and Holton. The 20-year plan that I've seen shows a parcel of land. I don't remember the exact language. I think it's talked about proposed changes. There's a block of land on our corner, northeastern corner of Taylor and Albert. I'm wondering what that proposed change was when the plan was drafted. Is that, as you know, is that still a plan now? If you could just speak about that particular plan.
I think what you're talking about is what's up here?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We own some property up here already. And so the concept here is to open up our the concept in this plan was to open up the athletic fields, move the tennis courts up, so we have an athletic complex that includes the tennis courts. They're not separate and kind of over on the side. Just kind of makes sense to have it together. And then we've got a physical plant facility in the center here that we have to move somewhere. One of the concepts is to maybe do it over here. Another might be to go on the other side of Pierce Butts.
Okay. And then if I could just add a comment to that. We have a young son who's 3. We do consider you a good neighbor. We just bought our house a little over a year ago. We enjoy the we see runners going up and down our block, and I can't speak for the other properties around us, which ones you own. I know we have a neighbor who lives on the corner. That's not a house that anyone owns. But for the foreseeable future, we imagine being there, and we hope that we'll be able to continue to do that. So.
Okay, I wanted to say we've got about 5 minutes left, so I just wanted to give you a couple more questions. So I know you asked one already, so I wanted to see if there's anybody else who hasn't asked a question or maybe.
I just have one comment. No offense to either side, but the problem is go after the city. If the city doesn't let them expand, they can't expand. So that's the guy you talk to.
Well, I agree. If the houses are torn down,
If you don't let them change residential, they gotta stay residential.
But they can
That's
still.
the guy you hound.
I'm well aware.
Because they're gonna do what they can.
Our
They're gonna tear
concern.
down every house they want.
That's why we're having this meeting today.
Yes, but they don't care
Demolished
about
houses, we can't resurrect them.
Yeah. Okay, but.
Okay, I'm gonna go in the back here. We got limited time.
Just take his view and go with it a little bit farther. What's happening here today isn't unique. It's happening all over the planet. This is systematic. Because the machine eats people, it eats space, and it eats resources. This is its very nature. Whether these people can control it or not, when the question is brought up, it is pocket over people. You talk about your aesthetics or your history, but when it hits that bottom line, that margin of profitability, that's how
we need to talk about one thing here. We have 2 students here. I think they're the only 2 students in the room. They're the only ones that came tonight with what we were trying to accomplish is talk about a different idea to the homes. This is exactly what we want to see, and we have all of the big ball in our hand as the community of all the beautiful pictures of the historic value. We can take that as this group to just what somebody said. How do we obtain this? Where do we go to get the feelers that are gonna not let them tear down houses? Plus, we don't have the students yet. We came to you for the petition and to let you know how many students know. We need their backing on the honor homes.
Okay, yeah, here, we're going there.
I was going to say that one of the things of which Hamline University should be most justly proud is its dispute resolution center. I fervently hope that the university will, and Hamline Historic Village will engage some of the professors there who teach really terrific classes in how to mediate and arbitrate things and come to reasonable decisions and come up with good processes. We have a wonderful resource right here for doing that.
I'm also a first-year student, and to be honest, I didn't know anything about this. That's why I actually came tonight. I don't have an opinion as of yet, but I'm interested to learn more about what Hamline's going to do and what the community needs and wants are here. That's why I came tonight, and that's probably what I think Hamline should do, is get more informed of the students, because this is about the first time I'm hearing of it, and that's why I came tonight, just to learn more about what's going on.
Thank you for coming.
We're getting up close to the time. We have till 9 o'clock, so I think all of us are welcome, to stay as long till then. Our official
we do need time for
times-
cleaning up and everything.
Our official stop time is 8:30. One thing I just want to say is we again, as Historic Hamline Village and neighbors, will again make the request: do not demolish 1549 Minnehaha. Agree to a moratorium that means something. That is the good faith gesture that you need to make. If you don't make that gesture, everything else feels hollow. And I'm a trained certified mediator. We can bring all the mediators that we want, but if there isn't good faith gestures in place, it's going to be pretty tough to restore the relationship. So
I need a clarification on that very thing. The moratorium of 1 month that you talked about is on what building?
1549.
To reiterate, we're going to take the next 30 to 60 days and continue to talk to the companies that were referred to us. This other company that came up, we'll talk to them in terms of 1549. So we're taking 36 to 60 days to figure that out. The moratorium on everything else is a year. I'll just say a year.
Okay,
I said 9 to 12 months. I don't. A year.
But you are retiring.
1 to 2 months moratorium.
Okay. The final question?
I guess for me, I would like to see a moratorium on destroying any of the houses until you have an approved building plan of what you're replacing it with. Now, I don't not know what houses are going to survive, but hopefully there is a process that we go through to work out. But ultimately, not tear down anything until we know what's going to replace it and that's been approved. Tearing down individual houses, it's urban blight. And you can go to Cleveland or Detroit and you can see what happens to neighborhoods as you tear down a house here and you tear down one here. It destroys the fabric of the neighborhood. And
You
that's
can't just
what
cite
we're
a
concerned
physical plant in a residential neighborhood and say you're going to do it.
Okay.
What can we expect with regard to further communications? What's the next step here? I would like to know what I expect.
Yeah, I think that our presenters can talk about that. So.
Well, I'll just say, because people are leaving, and first I want to thank everybody for coming. It's been a long time, 2 hours. I appreciate everybody who showed up. I sincerely appreciate all the comments, whether we agreed or not. I mean, this is the kind of dialogue that we wanted to start. This is why the group came together. We are pledged to having as many meetings as possible. We think we could have a charrette every month. I mean, there's a town in Brazil that you can read about in a book by Bill McKibben that's done amazing things by having charrettes where they meet on a Monday and by Friday they're going to have some plans. They don't mess around. And there's an amazing amount of stuff that you can achieve when people are committed. So we haven't seen any commitments from Hamline other than a moratorium that
Doesn't mean anything.
during a period when they weren't going to do anything. They've agreed to some meetings maybe, and they're saying they're going to take 30, 60 days to possibly find a buyer for 1549 Minnehaha, but is that to relocate that? Is to that keep it there? So we talked about we would leave this meeting with next steps. We're ready to meet anytime, anywhere, and not just us, to bring everybody to the table, and let's really do something different. That, as I said before, a neighborhood that loves its neighbor does so much more for you than a neighborhood that is polarized from a major institution that's there, and that does not need to happen. And I don't want that to happen.
I want to thank you as well for coming out tonight. I appreciate all the comments and the questions. From a process standpoint, I think this gentleman had the right idea. We'll get together with Historic Village as well as the Hamline Midway Coalition and talk about process.
When?
And we will design that month, 30 to 45 days.
But by then you could have torn down that house. That's too late.
10 days.
I can't commit to something we can't do. I mean,
Let's
we've got to,
meet.
we've
Why
got
can't you commit?
Just meet.
How about 2 weeks?
Yeah. Within time,
How about we meet in
if you're
2
going to tear
weeks?
down that house or make a decision on that house within 30 to 60 days, 45 days is not acceptable.
We need a meeting in a month.
No, 2 weeks.
Are you talking about a community meeting or just a meeting?
We just get people to table. If we have to bring the community, we'll bring the community.
Get 8 people.
30 days and we'll work on it. We won't tear it down. We won't remove 1549 until we get the process.
Does everybody know where to find this information
And I want to,
for our next meeting? Do they know about the website?
The Facebook page.
We have materials, so.
Okay.
What does you won't tear it down until you get a process going? What does that mean?
I was responding to this person's question over here.
Yeah, but
What does it mean?
That's what I want to know too. What does that mean? Process going. Does that mean that you're actually having conversations starting in a couple of weeks so that we actually know what's happening? Or does it mean that the decision gets made and then we hear about it?
I said we would work on the process for the 12-month moratorium and the discussions that we need to have. We have to get back on track in terms of the conversation. You asked me that if we're going to move forward removing 1549, why would we do that before we get the process figured out? I just told you we will get the process figured out before we remove 1549.
Yeah, but that
So I'm
sounds
being
like
very
you're
clear.
what
process? You know, it's unclear, sorry. It's evasive. It's not unclear, it's evasive. I'm sorry.
You just got done saying that you have great communication with regard to this community, and I think that, you know, this is saying otherwise. And so right now, we're asking you to communicate with us, to give us the opportunity to be a part of a plan, if you will. And in the meantime, you're going to stop destroying the houses that are slated. That's not so much to ask, I don't think.
I agree. Either you want to engage the community or you don't.
Right on.
We want to get back on track and engage the community, and I'm saying that. I'm not saying that we have had a great process over the last year or two in terms of communication. I apologize that right out of the get-go. I said we have not done, we missed some milestones in communication.
Right, but what are you going to do
I
to move forward to fix
apologize
it?
for that.
We heard that. How are you going to fix it?
I don't have all those answers. Part of
Okay.
that is going to get worked through as we work together. That's the intent of why we got together.
Right.
We're going to work together, and I'm telling you, the commitment is over the next 30 days, we will work together and figure out that process. I have also said very clearly to the question you raised is we will not remove 1549 until we have that process figured out.
But Doug, I think what they're responding to, and is you saying until we have that process figured out, that suggests that day 30, we sit down, we talk about a process, and at day 31, you tear the house down because we just had a process. What we're not hearing is that, I don't think what you're hearing is the essential message, which is, this is not $1 million investment we're telling you to make in 1549 Minnehaha. You could board it up for probably $500 of plywood, board it up, and keep it through the winter and give an opportunity for a real solution. Now maybe you guys are not going to let go of the idea that you want to vacate that whole area and so the house needs to go, but the idea of preserving the house or deciding we were a little bit over ambitious, we don't need to come that far, we actually don't have to come south of Minnehaha at all, we can find other resources within the community, we can figure out housing, we can build up, we can do a number of things, and that's what would solve the problem. Everybody wins. You don't have to deal with that house necessarily or put minimal amount into it. Someone else who loves it can restore it and take care of it, and you know, it would be a win-win. But it sounds like what you're saying is, well, institutionally we're still going to go forward because we need more housing. And I mean, I understand that there's other wheels moving here. You don't get to speak for the president or maybe even for the provost, and I realize that you're retiring, but I think what people hoped was that there was sort of a dent, there would be a dent in that where you might say, you know what, we're willing to revisit all this and preserve the status quo, and I think that's what people want. And they just hear you saying that basically you're not going to preserve the status quo except the status quo that you weren't going to do anything anyway, but that this one house, it's slated for demolition, you're going to demolish it, but you'll do it in a way that feels like you answered some more questions.
Right.
And you can clarify that at any point and say, okay, we'll wait. I will go to the president and say, you need to wait because that's a really bad idea and it's going to be a pivotal moment that's going to be really bad for the college, and we need to revisit all of our numbers and our tuition, our enrollment estimates, and everything.
That's
I think what people are asking.
part of your moratorium
The
that actually
discussion
makes
about
sense.
1549 can continue to occur in the 30 days we figure out the process for the full moratorium, and if that is influential in terms of the leadership in Hamlin, in terms of making a different choice. Right now, there are lots of facts about the home at 1549 that haven't been talked about. You don't know all the facts.
Right.
That's
right.
What's missing? What do we need to know?
If we get into a smaller discussion and move things forward, we can talk about it.
Is someone living there, hiding? I mean, what are we missing? I mean, we know the radiators were taken out. We know the plumbing was taken out, which means nothing's going to freeze. We know it has a new roof. We know it has new windows. We know it has new electrical. What are we missing? If it's unsafe, we don't allow anybody inside.
The bottom line is that none of those improvements in that home were built with any building permit or any inspection.
So sell it. Sell it to somebody that will do all that.
I'm not here to get involved in it, but we can have those conversations over the next 30 days.
So ask someone to think about it at Hamlin, because that would really help.
So if it's within the next, when it's done, when can you give us what date? You give us a date, we'll be there.
Well, we can work.
We're going to have to talk about, I can't do that standing.
Well, that's the problem.
Thank you for coming.